While we're allowing everyone to get on, I'll just go ahead and open up. We are so excited to welcome you to today's session, Employer Perceptions of the High School Equivalency. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the CEO for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and we have with us a wonderful group of presenters. I'm going to go to the next slide here so we can see who they are. Today's presenters, so in no specific order, I wanted to mention we have Dr. Jeff Arnott, Executive Director of Osceola County Adult Education Programs, Patricia Tyler, Executive Director for NASDAE, and Stephenie Rittberger, Coordinator for Career Learning Center. And Jeff, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick for the group?
Sure. My name's Jeff Arnott. I oversee all the adult vocational programs, high school vocational programs, and of course our adult education programs here in Osceola County, Florida. We're located right south of Orlando in a large suburban district right in the middle of Central Florida with basically it is one of the fastest growing regions of the United States as well. So there's a lot of excitement around that, the future growth here in the central belt of our wonderful state.
And Jeff, you brought to us Crystal Davidson, who's the Vice President for iBuild. Would you also introduce her as well?
Yes, Crystal and I go way, way, way back. She used to be the tech center director over in West Orange County and so forth. And I've known her for at least 15 years, it seems like. But anyways, and now she's working as the vice president of iBuild, which is which basically runs a lot of apprenticeship programs in Central Florida through many times some subcontractors and also even some Fortune 500 companies. So we're real excited to have her and of course her boss, Debbie Rodriguez. They've been a wonderful partner with us here in Osceola County. So go ahead, Crystal, tell us a little bit more.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hi, yes, I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, I go way back. I've been in post-secondary education, and before that, I was in high school education. So I was a teacher, a coach, assistant principal, a principal of a high school, and then transitioned about 12 years ago to the post-secondary arena and workforce development. Got a lot of experience with running apprenticeships for the Central Florida area, and then been for about a little over a year. I have been working directly for the construction companies. And that's the commercial construction companies in the state of Florida to develop talent workforce pipelines, which I think we're all here to discuss. Obviously in Florida, we have a high ESOL population, and we're really working hard to engage the underserved populations. And Jeff is a wonderful partner, and we're doing some amazing things here in the state of Florida.
Thank you so much, Crystal and Jeff. I really appreciate that. I want to go back one slide, and Pat, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm Pat Tyler, Executive Director of the National Association of State Directors of Adult Education. And so NASDAE, as we call ourselves, NASDAE exists to be a resource for the state directors and their key staffers as they administer the federally funded adult education program. So some of the resources, we offer some training, we offer a lot of networking and sharing so that we find state directors around the country need to share so they're not duplicating efforts. We put out public information, training, and also legislative alerts. We're not an advocacy organization. We work with our partners for that. But so I'm happy to be here with you today.
Thank you, Pat. Stephenie, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Stephenie Rittberger. I'm the coordinator at the Career Learning Center in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and I'm here to really talk about more of the rural populations and some places that have more of the mom and pop kind of places that our students would work and how their perception is with the GED or with any kind of high school equivalency. And I'm also the Region 5 rep.
Yes, so Stephenie serves on our COABE board, and she's also has in the past been one of our incentive grant winners as well. So we're excited to have her here. Thank you, Stephenie. So while we've all introduced ourselves, if you'll take a minute to introduce yourself in the chat box, I'll go to the next slide here. And Pat's really going to walk us through why we wanted to survey employers, and then the two of us will talk together about the survey findings, which we're excited about, want to share with you, and we feel that there's an end game in sight. And so, Pat, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Sharon. And thanks, Sharon and COABE, for the partnership and for the outstanding efforts to gather the information that will be shared with everyone today. So why an employer survey? Sharon and I have had many conversations where we've shared concerns over a perception that businesses and organizational hiring managers may have a bias for a traditional high school graduate over someone who earned a high school equivalency or alternate secondary credential. For example, those that are issued through our programs. Having met the standards for the GED or the HiSET testing program or the National External Diploma Program, to mention some of the nationally recognized high school equivalency assessments. But in addition to those, many states have implemented unique credentialing options that may combine measures such as credit recovery, test results, portfolio completion, college credits, or maybe even other achievements to result in the award of a secondary credential. So those of us in the field understand that these measures are based on the same high-level standards as traditional high school diplomas. We felt the need to test the perception that employers prefer a real diploma, quote and unquote, over those earned by students in our adult education programs. And that's a statement that has been used recently by some vendors of some newer credentialing programs. So some of the rhetoric even suggests that the credentialing standards that we use for our nationally recognized testing and our state programs is substandard. So as I said, Sharon and I have talked about this and how could we get some information from employers. So we drafted a very brief survey to start the conversation with some businesses about their preferences. The brevity was necessary, we felt, in order to get people to respond because we're looking to reach out to some very busy individuals. But due to its brevity also, the survey leaves much in question. So it was our hope that the respondents would indicate willingness to participate in focus groups to continue the conversation. And again, it's a brief survey. It was not conducted scientifically. In other words, we don't have a statistically correct sample of businesses and organizations in terms of size, type of business, but we truly wanted to start this conversation. And thanks to the extensive efforts of COABE, over 750 employers responded to the survey and over 80% said they would participate in focus groups. So NASDAE and I look forward to working with COABE on the continuing conversations.
Thanks so much.
I'll turn it back to Sharon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Pat. So one of the things that we felt was very important was to reach out to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So we reached there first, worked with them. Then we reached to our Behind Every Employer partners. There's 584 local programs that are on the Behind Every Employer map, meaning that they want to work with other local employers. These are adult ed programs that want to work with other local employers. So we reached out to them. But then I have to say where we really saw the survey start clicking in was when we reached out through SAFL Partners. We have the Center of Excellence in Apprenticeships. And one of our partners there is called Fastport. We worked with them to get the survey out. And then as many other channels as we could possibly think of, because at one point we were sort of hovering around 19 responses from local employers. And we thought that was a concern. We really wanted to have a good large swath of responses from big employers, small employers, and everything in between. So we did have 750 responses. We did categorize the responses by, as you can see, the participation responses by state. You see that California, we had the most responses there, which of course makes sense. And then here in the blue, the other states where it shows a pretty good response rate. And then some states we had no response at all, which I just found interesting. So as we go along, we can also see the employees represented. And I thought this was interesting. I personally believe this has to do with our partnership with Amazon, one of our good partners, and their response rate, because this is represent how many employees are represented. So that's a little map there that shows you the employee representation as well. And then the number of employees in the companies that were surveyed, you can see that information as well. And of course, the least amount were 100,000 plus, right down here. We had the bigger companies, there was just fewer responses from bigger companies, a lot more responses from the smaller companies, which is great. We found that really interesting, and that meant that those local programs that are working with the local employers were getting them to respond, as well as I believe through that partnership with Softful Partners on the Center of Excellence, there's a number of smaller employers there as well. So we were encouraged to see the response rate up to, I believe there were 754 by the time the survey was completed. Pat, did you want to talk about this slide?
Yeah, so one of the questions that we thought was important does your business have requirements for a high school diploma for any of your hires? Because first of all, we thought that's the way to start this conversation. So, and overwhelmingly, the respondents said that yes, that they do. So, I mean, 86% is a pretty high percentage of them. And that was the first question, because then we wanted to get into, what type of credential are you preferring, if any?
Exactly. I felt this was interesting too, because there's some old data out there that points to 63% of employers require a diploma. Now, how many employers had been surveyed for that, I'm not sure, but this, according to the survey that we conducted, 86%. So to me, that does validate that, diplomas are necessary to get a job with an employer. This next slide, Pat.
Okay, so hiring preferences. Our question was, does your business have any preference in hiring for a traditionally earned high school diploma over the alternative or equivalency credentials, GED test, HiSET exam, national external diploma? So we have a high percentage of people that responded yes to that question. So I think our intent was, do you prefer a traditionally earned diploma over one of the others? But we can't be sure that they interpreted the question the way we intended. So we have 25% did not favor a high school diploma over HSE, 63% prefer a high school diploma, our traditional high school diploma, to an HSE, and then 10% unsure. So again, this really opens the door for more conversation. First of all, did they understand the question the way we intended it? And second of all, what is the basis for your preference?
And we found the comments were interesting, that there was a preference for the traditional high school diploma, but they'll accept the HSE. So we thought that was great. And then most of the jobs require it. However, the service industry, groundskeeping, housekeeping are exempt from diploma requirements. So that's where we're talking about, how do we help our adult learners get family sustaining jobs? That diploma is so important, right? Okay. And then this next one, did you want to talk about this, Pat?
Sure. So once hired, do you find a difference in the quality of work produced by employees' traditional high school diploma over the alternate or equivalency? So again, our intent with the question is there really a difference in the quality of work? Do the traditional high school graduates perform better for you? Again, we would want to make sure that they interpreted the question the way we intended it. But we got the response, 62% said yes. So assuming that they understood what we intended. They're telling us that 62% of traditional high school graduates produce more quality work, which is concerning to us. And then 25% said no, 11 said I'm sure. So of course we want to dive more deeply into this response.
We did have some interesting comments. People who have recently earned a GED tend to have better skills all around. That was one. And then associates who started out with their high school equivalency and have gone on to college and gotten their bachelor's and master's degrees. So like Pat said, we're unsure if what the survey findings actually say on these last two questions, because we think there could be some lack of certainty when the individuals were filling out the survey, if what we were exactly what we were asking. So we do have some focus groups we want to run in the future to help make sure that we understand what was being said here. We found this was interesting to us. Pat, do you want to talk about this slide too?
Yes, so soft skills, teamwork, communication, flexibility, and we've heard this before. So, that's 70% of the employers indicated that. Industry recognized career skills training, they rated lower. And digital literacy skills, this surprised me. Fewer than 30% said digital literacy skills were important. So that's a surprise.
That was surprising, but I think being able to work well and work as a team, communicate, be flexible, that definitely came out on top, along with industry recognized career skills training. So this one really was I believe a result of, we had sent the survey through COABE's workforce committee. We have a task force that reviewed this before we sent it out, and they asked that this would be added in. Stephenie, as our workforce committee chair, would you like to talk about this slide?
Sure. So when I'm looking at this slide, we know that people who are entering the high school equivalency classes are trying to really get that little edge up. And so it's highly imperative that employers support that, especially if they want to move their employee up the pipeline. So if they do have the soft skills and they can be a great employee, what can we do to move them up inside of that hierarchy so that they're working at a higher level, they're earning more wages, and they're able to sustain a family, like you pointed out. I think the interesting thing here is that employers are willing to schedule around classes and that they're willing to provide some financial assistance. And we see that in our own area. We have a lot of mom and pop companies who will hire brand new employees, and they love them as entry-level employees, but they do not have an opportunity to move up until they have completed a high school equivalency. They can't enter that next level of training. And so they're very good about trying to schedule around it. Sometimes they're even really great about maybe paying that hour or two that they're spending in class every day so that they can make it to that next rung.
And Stephenie, thank you for that. And we're seeing this increased pay upon completion of the high school equivalency. So that's really a nice accommodation as well. And some of the comments I thought were great, that they can be promoted to a permanent position, that they were trying to develop a program to assist temporary employees who do not have their diploma so they can be hired on fully. So we see here a bit of a partnership between employers and the employee in helping them to progress to that next level, which is great. Pat, did you have anything you wanted to say before we go to the next slide?
No, I was just looking at some of the comments in the chat, but we can go
Circle back
to the next one and come back.
So Pat has alluded to this, the focus for the future. Do you want to talk about this, Pat?
Yeah, so the one question on the survey was, would you be willing and interested in participating in a focus group to discuss this further? And that's over 80% response said yes. So we are looking forward to working with COABE on putting that together. And, you know, we'll want to, you know, hear from the folks in the field too, in terms of what's important to them, to all of you.
It's great. So now I'm going to turn this over to Stephenie to talk about her workforce development program there at the Career Learning Center of the Black Hills and how they've worked so well with employers.
Sure. So I think that we're very, very fortunate to be in the Black Hills of South Dakota because there are lots of businesses who are very willing to hire entry-level positions. And honestly, it's not having the high school equivalency doesn't seem to hold them back for taking a job. Like I said, it's really that next level up when they get into a position and they need to train into a better position. If they don't have the equivalency, that's where they're held back. We have about 15 small employers who are very, very willing to work with us. And so I use these pictures because these kind of depict some of the places that would typically hire 2 or 3 or maybe 4 of our students in a year, and then be really great about supporting them and making sure that they can finish up. So oftentimes we will kind of work around some stackable credentials or some things that might not be as traditionally looked at. So for instance, with the firefighters, we do some FEMA training classes so that they get Incident Command Systems 100 and Incident Command Systems 700 and also 200 if they need it. And then 2 basic wildland firefighting courses. And then we might ask a local fire department to host them for a field training day, and so that they can become certified. And then that makes them very, very hireable in our area. And so then they're able to work into even state positions with South Dakota Division of Wildland Fire. And then the nice thing with that is once they've completed an equivalency, they're very able to move up because there's so many training courses and examples that they can follow in order to get to the next rung. So those students have been highly successful in climbing that corporate ladder, if you will. Our EMTs, we have several who have been hired as EMTs, and I think it's interesting because that effort was really supported by other students who were in leadership positions as they left. They actually went on to some EMT training, and then they became certified, and then they were willing to come back and teach courses within our own walls to kind of help people filter into these positions. So right now I have EMTs hired in Custer, Rapid City, Hill City, Sturgis, and Keystone, I believe. So many small areas are looking at those EMTs to filter in. And the nice thing there too, it's a medical pathway. They're very able and capable of moving into different positions as they move forward. And then just other small areas that are willing to hire and then train in, and oftentimes they'll even support with a Builds Dakota scholarship or something so that they can get the training that they need. And the mechanic is a great example of that. That student in particular was hired to clean a facility, and then they made sure he got a scholarship to move forward. Can we move forward to the next slide, Sharon? So I think one of the biggest things that we can do as individuals and local programs is really take a look at what kind of continuum of supports we can provide to our students as they move into the workforce, and recognize that the adult, the high school equivalency, the GED, the adult ed program, if we can supply some soft handoffs, if we can supply some supports as they move to the next rung, those students are much more likely to stay on the trail and be able to kind of get where they're going in a more efficient manner. So we were very fortunate to have a community partner who was really invested in fighting poverty come on board and make sure that we could hire a case manager that is very, very dedicated and diligent to working with this. And her name is Lori Larson, and I'll just say we get a lot of bang for our buck out of that because she is willing to really take the individuals on a one-on-one basis and make sure they're matched up where their skills and abilities lie and where their interests are at. So I just would really highly encourage people to seek out those other funders that can help with those kinds of things. So John T. Vakurovich has been amazing. The South Dakota Department of Labor has been amazing for us. So I think she made a slide for me and she called it the secret sauce, and I'm ready to sing the McDonald's, that little 2 all beef patties part right now. But it really is, I think that partnership and being able to really take a look at what the students need and then support those needs, recognizing that a lot of them are coming from places where they are struggling in poverty, or they're really struggling with maybe addictions, or they have other things going on in their life. What do we need to do to support that so that they can be an excellent employee? And how do we support their efforts so that they can make the right kind of connections and know the right people to move up? And how do they deal with HR? And how do they know how to ask the right questions so that all those things happen efficiently and effectively for them? Sharon,
Thank
I'll
you
send
so
it back
much.
to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephenie. So I think just to kind of highlight the trauma-informed practices you've put in place, that's been huge. And that you've been willing to work with basically all employers, but really ask them, will they work with ESL learner or students? Will they work with learners with disabilities? And that's really reaped dividends for you, as well as your partnerships with Department of Labor, with foundations, and then always using those labor market statistics when you're talking to employers and trying to bring them on board as a partner. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Now I'd like to turn this over to Jeff and Crystal to talk about the Adult Education Partnership with Osceola and iBuild.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll give you a little background about us first in Osceola County. We're, like I said, we mentioned before, we're located in Central Florida, right south of Orlando, literally the county right south of it. And we serve over 4,000 adult education students a year. We're also in a great situation. We have a technical college I oversee that serves over 1,000 a year. And we have a good partnership with Valencia College, which is our community college here locally in the Central Florida belt. And it's really been a time for us to shine. And we have a large program. And I've also been a director of a medium-sized program and also a very small program, just to show you that partnerships, I believe, only work in large districts. They can lose. Stephenie, you just proved that it can work in more rural and smarter districts. And I'm convinced it can work in the Florida Keys to the North Slope of Alaska. And I've been the director in the Florida Keys, so I can tell you it definitely works. So it's it's one of those things. Also, our student population, the vast majority of our student population is between the age of 25 and 44. Which is the good working core of folks in jobs. So we definitely have that. I think it's almost as an advantage to a certain extent. And that's just my personal talk. And also 80% of our students are adult ESL learners. So it's definitely skewed that way. Our local program is. But one thing I found when students came into our program when I took over this job a little over 2 years ago, is that students had this vast idea of what they wanted to do, but really didn't know how to get there. And that is research. That's part of my dissertation, so I can say that. As a result, we really had to quadruple down on the number of career navigators and so forth. So Stephenie, you brought that up, about financial literacy, those things. We're doing that now. And I think that's made a huge, huge difference to really talk to students about their future apprenticeship programs, and also the community college versus Osceola Technical College. I'm a capitalist, so I believe in working with the student where they want to go, not where we want them to go, but where they want to go. So we really try to work that away. And also, I think it's a shining time, especially in Florida right now. There's a lot of money coming our way to help support these programs. I will say, Florida, we do have a nice funding source called our workforce development dollars. It is a straight allocation from the state legislature. It's been around for years. So we get those operational dollars in addition to the dollars that come from Washington. So we've had that. And on top of that, they've been throwing all kinds of money our way for apprenticeships and so forth. And I'll give credit where credit's due. A lot of that comes from Governor Ron DeSantis, who has thrown a lot of money toward apprenticeship programs that's made partnerships like ours possible. and everything. In fact, he just released another $10 million that Crystal and I both took advantage of. We were having a nice conversation about how we're going to partner with that money. So the partnerships are there. And I think part of my role is in this role, and this is my advice to not only the business folks on here, but also the directors and programs there. You have to invest time yourself to really go out there and really build the reputation of your program. I probably spent in a month, it's probably 4 or 5 days really talking to business partners, talking to people. In fact, I had a breakfast this morning and go have lunches and so forth with people. I'm in a position where I can do that. Plus, I like to eat, so why not? It's a good place to meet everybody and meet people halfway and really find out what they want. And when you get out there and really beat the pavement, you find out real quick that that there's a lot of people out there that don't know a lot about adult ed. Immediately, they always talk to me about, well, tell me about your high school graduates coming out of high school, your 18-year-olds. Well, tell me about what's coming out of the technical college. But you really have to sit there and talk to them about the IETs. You have to talk to them about those particular things. So it is a wonderful thing. I think it just takes a lot of time. You really have to let your employees trust them to do all the bureaucratic stuff, but really get out there and build the community building and so forth like that. But anyway, this partnership we've had with Crystal, and by the way, this is a partnership probably before I took over this job, and it also shows to you just really work with people because you never know where you're going to work with them again. And that's how this particular thing this worked here. Anyway, Crystal, tell us about how you reached out to us, and I get to yes, and that's what I think that's another thing. Try to get to yes. No idea is foolish. Try to get to yes. Anyway, go ahead.
And that's really what we appreciate about Jeff and his team is the willingness to think outside the box. And coming from the industry perspective, obviously I was in public education and kind of where Jeff has been running schools and technical colleges and ESOL programs and all that for 10 plus years and transitioned over with the industry side. The reason iBuild was actually formed was from the commercial construction side. It was the barrier between educational entities and the actual industry itself, and each one was blaming each other. So educational partners were blaming the industry, and the industry was blaming the education. And finally, one day, I would have to say to all the women on the chat today that it was a bunch of women from industry and educators that said, we can't do this twice a year meeting to blame each other. We've got to figure out how do we develop multiple direct paths of pipelines into the commercial construction industry to basically save our infrastructure because we don't have enough skilled tradespeople. How do we do that? And one of our major targets is our adult ed population, those with language as a barrier or those with the high school equivalency, those that maybe have dropped out of school because of other problems, etc. But that is one of our 5 main areas of approach, is that we're really targeting that group. And with Dr. Arnott and his team, and he does have a team, they have been so open and willing to have courageous conversations and willing to listen to the industry and our owners, misperceptions. I think what you guys are doing at COABE to talk about misperceptions of what a GED or HSE is, what does that look like? And they're might not understand. A lot of the problems that we're seeing is they don't truly understand and they don't have a pathway. So Dr. Arnott and myself, we don't only just meet with the school districts and the adult ed population, we also meet with that next level. Is it the technical college? Is it the association, the community college level? How do we take that student and show them that I'm an entry-level laborer learning, getting my GED or learning the language? How do I get to end up being a superintendent of a job site? How do I do that? We do that with pre-apprenticeships that we partnered with Jeff on. We do that in correctional facilities. We do that in community centers. We do that across the board. And how do we get them exposed? And how do we go, like Stephenie was saying, that one-on-one case manager? How do we help them decide what's best for them? Construction might not be the best way. It might be a launching point into becoming a project estimator, to becoming a marketing specialist. But let's talk about how do we support you and in that infantile stages of your career. How do we give you options? And I would have to say Jeff and his counselors and everyone is so easy to work with from my industry perspective that they never say no. They say, well, let's think about that. And I think that's what's really important coming from a school district myself, for 10 years, is we have a tendency to say it doesn't fit within our box. oh, we can't do that, a flexible schedule for these adult students. Oh, it doesn't fit within this, where, Jeff and his team go back and they say, you know what, we can do that. We can offer ESOL classes on a job site in the middle of Disney World. We can do that. That's something that I think we can work around. So I think those are the opportunities that I think that as we go through this workforce shortage, that it's going to take partnerships like COABE leading it, reallocating, understanding what is out there and what a HSE is, what is an ESOL learner, what does that look like, and how can we better that, and how can we make them an adequate part of our workforce pipeline.
Yeah, Crystal, and also I know on the away from the iBuild side with other partners, and I know we've talked about this before too. There's a lot of companies out there, and like I said, we deal with. In fact, here's my stack of cards of people that we're dealing with right now. Right there's proof. And there's Fortune 500 companies in there, and there's mom and pops, even got a food truck company that's working with us and so forth like that. There's a lot of companies that really want to try to build inner mobility within their own workforce. These are the folks that I know, I think, Pat, you brought it up and through this survey that they did, that there's certain entry-level jobs where people can come in, like the landscapers and so forth like that. Companies are now looking at that pool of people of how you can get them into jobs that have need a high school diploma. What's the better way to do that? Or English skills. What's the best way to do that? We'll host an English class for you on your site. And we've actually had those companies actually not only pay their employees, but they have a cohort of students, and these students are actually wanting to move up. Very high attendance, very good NRS results. So if you're looking for all that bureaucracy stuff, you cover all that as well. And in addition, I never ask a business partner for money. I figure once we get in there, they start giving us money. So for the donuts for the staff and all that kind of stuff. I really want to treasure their time in our partnership, and really at the end of the day, with the student in mind and also the employer, their employee in mind. And I think that partnership is how it works. But yeah, I beat the pavement. I go to every chamber event. I don't care if it's a goat scrubbing contest, I'll go there. Just because you never know who needs your services. So it's definitely worth just getting out there and just being the face of your program. And I think that's the number one thing we can do as adult educators, is get to know that. Also, another tip is too, everybody reports to somebody. Educate them as well. Because you'll find out real quick that maybe a superintendent's, college presidents, and so forth may not know about adult education. Or if you're a middle manager employee of a company, the boss may not know about the benefits of this. So I think just educating them and continuously educating will reap some benefits as well. Great story here. Our superintendent, Dr. Pace, who I love to death, best boss I've ever had. And I know this is being recorded, and that's the truth. She I worked with her. I was her assistant principal way back in the day, and really just got this passion for adult ed. And I've really just talked to her about it. Next thing you know, she's meeting with the county commissioners, and they're giving me $200-some thousand to help for GEDs, because she felt that the best way to educate our young children is their parents to have education as well. So we used some of that money to build some family literacy programs and some short-term credentialing workforce programs from that. I almost cried. I don't think I've ever had any boss that say, here, Jeff, take some of this gift money. We're going to give it to adult education. Near enough cried. So yeah, and I think that's just what it is, the partnerships. And also, if you're in a place of advocacy, there's nothing more than important than talking to the state legislatures, working with those. One of our local reps is going to bat for us for one of our high school programs, one of our United States representatives, for $1 million for one of our programs. We don't know if we're going to get it or not, but hey, it's in there. It's in there. And also your state reps too, they have a big thing. I've been able to get extra money from them for special projects. But once again, they just need to know about adult ed. They don't know about it. And it's not because they don't want to know about it. They just don't know about it. So once again, to educate, show the return on investment, including the student stories. I think there's value in both. To get out there and just do those things. I think you'll reap some benefits there. And that means your mayors, your city councilmen, the dog catcher, all those people, they can benefit. Literally, we had a dog catching program, believe it or not, here that actually works. So yes, even the dog catcher can help you out. So definitely get out there and just beat the pavement. That's my message, basically.
I would just like to piggyback on what Jeff said. One of the biggest things that I think that we've done that's made the biggest difference is when we go to meet with legislatures from our state and national elected officials, we go together. We go together with the educators, with the teacher, with the Dr. Arnotts. We go as industry. So I bring my GCs, I bring my VPs, and literally we go into their office and overtake them. And they are so overwhelmed by that. We're working together cohesively. So not only is the school district, technical colleges, adult ed, but the community college VPs are there as well. Their programs are there. And then industry saying, we love them, we're working with them. You've got to give them more funding. You've got to think about this differently than in the past. We've got to support them more. And I can say that we've had a better luck going at it that way with more funding opportunities than we ever thought before when we were going at it in silos, because we're able to, show from the industry perspective, no, this is really helping our workforce side of the house. And then my companies give lots of money to those campaigns. So that also helps from our side of the house, from a construction. I'm making my construction companies be very strategic in who they're funding, and if they have to have a workforce development component within their strategy for election. If they don't, we're not supporting them at all. So that's another big piece that I think we've really made a difference with Jeff and his team.
I think the other big piece too is to give the employers and give the students something to strive for. And I think this is where the pre-apprenticeship model comes in. I'm proud to say that we started the first one in another county at the Space Coast, that I started the first pre-apprenticeship in the state of Florida for adult education, working with a big company, Coastal Mechanical. They actually sponsors. I know they work with you as well with iBuild and so forth. They built, I think they built UCF Stadium. They redid the swamp up in Gainesville. They're a big company. They're legit, and so forth. So we've been very, proud of that we have noticed it really figured out. Every state has it different. I'm sure even each jurisdiction has it different. Really look to see how you can leverage pre-apprenticeship programs, because students don't have to have a GED to go through a pre-apprenticeship program in Florida. Let me put that caveat. In Florida, they don't have to. You just have to have a business partner who wants to work with you to give those kids a shot, or adults, give them a shot once they leave that pre-apprenticeship program within the apprenticeship program. And if you have a cluster of employers that do that, like I built, it even gives a little capitalist feel. They're in there wooing them. It's like Steve Spurrier coming to town to recruit some Gators. It was just, everybody's Steve Spurrier and Bobby Bowden together in there wooing them and so forth. It's actually a beautiful thing. It really, really is. Seeing these students light up, that they have these opportunities, big time opportunities too. We're not talking minimum wage jobs. We're talking real careers. I think that's been good. The dropout rate is very low. It's when they stick with it, it's actually a great opportunity. And once again, you can start apprenticeship programs in Florida. Let me put that caveat out there, with smaller companies, larger companies, Fortune 500 companies. We have one with Alfred Beatty. They build skyscrapers. They're big. They probably built half of New York. They're big. And they've been really, really wonderful. But one thing I've noticed, regardless of the mom and pops, the middle-sized businesses or the Fortune 500 companies, they all want employees. They all want those same things that Pat said, the soft skills, which apprenticeship programs have put in. And I think at this point in time, they're willing to take a chance, even with the folks behind bars or behind the walls. I want to say that correctly. Crystal's done a real good job of trying to find students, even in incarcerated students as well. If you want to talk a little bit about that, I think that is a wonderful, wonderful thing that you're doing there.
Yeah, we have one of our obviously prongs to one of our talent pipelines is the incarcerated. So we have worked closely with the Florida Department of Corrections, and we actually have our pre-apprenticeship model in 2 of the state correction facilities. And like I told Jeff a couple weeks ago, the Secretary of Corrections wants it everywhere because the employment process, because it's run by, we're in partnership with Dr. Arnott from the educational side. And then we're also have the employers on the other end when they get out. So the ease of placing them is so much easier from, I'm already knowing the HR directors, because as we all know, sometimes HR is where dreams go to die, and somehow it gets caught up in that HR phase, and you can't ever get them there. They say they want people, but to get them hired, it could be months and months. Well, we're dealing with someone who was recently released from a halfway house or even a full onset prison, it is very challenging because they don't have a month. They are on, they have to get to work immediately. So working with iBuild partners and the State Department of Corrections, we're able to place them pretty quickly once they're released. So they're dual enrolled or whatever, they're enrolled with Dr. Arnott and at also a technical college while they're in the program. So that's giving us some offset of funding that we're able to receive from the workforce development funds. And then we're also getting funding from the State Department of Corrections, and it's working out wonderfully. We're replacing them. It's just finding teachers, as we all know, from anybody from the educational side, trying to find those trades teachers is one of the hardest things that we're running up against. But we're in the jails, we're in the prisons, and obviously a lot of times they're getting their GEDs and then coming to our program. So they're getting GEDs while incarcerated and then transitioning over into our pre-apprenticeship program, and they're in our pre-apprenticeship program 6 months prior to release. So that way we're not training them when they're going to be released 5 years from now. And we're giving those entry-level credentials that are stackable. So we're giving them the OSHAs, the CPR first aids, all that. Plus there's articulated over to Osceola Technical. So the goal is that we tell them, look, you've got these opportunities here with a technical college if you're going to be in the Osceola area. If not, you're in Pinellas County. Let's work with that group to say, okay, what do you want next? How do we get this? Is it truck driving? Is it, is it electrician? What is the next step for you? And so that's really where we're trying to kind of broaden their horizons and give them true opportunities that they can actually get employment with. And obviously construction is a second chance employer. So we're just kind of trying to do what Stephenie's trying to do, give them options, let them see that there is a way. And that we're trying to give them those entry level, get in the door, do not pass go skills that will get them on a job site pretty quick post release. So we're just excited about that. And that's that population. I think America as a whole is looking at that reentry opportunity to reskill those guys and girls before they come out.
Yeah, and same with adult ESL too. I know some people asked about adult ESL. In Florida, we serve a lot of ESL students, and that seems to be a real good population as well, to really that really wants to strive for those extra goals and so forth. And also, I know some people may be asking, do we get funding for pre-apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship programs in Florida? Let me put that caveat out there again. We do. We actually do get instructional hours we report, and that's if you're the local educational agency, which allows us to partner with Crystal and iBuild and other companies, so we can, they can help operate these programs. They're the pros at this, and we help support on the academic side because we feel we're the pros at that. So it really does help. So yes, their money does change hands and so forth like that, not particularly from my hands to her hands, but company to company. It actually it does there to help support it. But there is no losers in this, I can tell you that. Everybody wins. So if anyone has any questions on how to make that happen, I did put my Twitter account, please follow me on Twitter, Jeffrey Arnott, also my cell phone number and also my email address. I'll be more than happy to sit down and talk with you about any of these particular things that we do here in Osceola. In fact, I'd be honored to be honest with you. So
I just want to thank you both. What an amazing, the three of you, Stephenie, Jeff, and Crystal, talking about how you've made this work at the local level. And what I hear repeatedly is that adult learner focus, right? Helping that individual, A, get the skills they need, and then B, get the job they need. So it sounds so simple when we say it, but that's what's really at the heart of it. And then partnership, right? That Jeff and Stephenie, you're out there, and Crystal, you're out there looking to partner. How can we partner and make this work? I think that's just critical. And I think also one of the things I hear repeatedly, and Jeff, you said it so well, when you're the face of adult education to these employers. The local program administrators, when you go in and talk to an employer, they're going to think about you and how you've presented yourself and all of the different options, and that you're that talent pipeline. And so thinking of it like that, go in there, and when you talk to employers and share about how this is going to help them, because it is going to help them. At the end of the day, it's going to be a beautiful partnership when it's done well, and it's going to help the employer, it's going to help the local program, and it's going to help the adult learner. So really excited to hear about this. Stephenie, did you have any closing words before we go to the questions and answers?
Well, I was actually just typing a couple answers in, but I guess I'd like to address a couple of those questions. And I had a question in there that was, about referral and how we receive referrals. And I'll just say community-based organizations that realize that we have a workforce connections program and realize the value of that are excellent partners. And we have 88 community service organizations that have referred students to us in the last year. So I think that's pretty huge. Employers will call us and say, I would love to move this person up, but they don't have a high school equivalency. What can we do so that we can get them training? They refer. And then we just have a lot of students who are walking in word of mouth. Hey, you know what? I know this person receives some services. I would like to get those same services, and I see value in being able to do something different. How do I tap into that? So I would say all three of those areas. And then there was another one that kind of said something about accommodations and what are the percentages of people receiving some of those accommodations from employers during an HSE class. And so I can just tell you that like my underage 24 students, about half of them are receiving some kind of service, and South Dakota Department of Labor has been very intentional with a program that they're calling PREP. Participants reaching employability potential. And they're really have been intentional about putting some money where their mouth is and really making sure that those students are supported to the next level. And so about half of them are using that. And I will say too that it's probably about half in my adult classrooms, but that is more of an employer supported thing where the employer is saying, okay, let's make sure that you have Tuesday and Thursday afternoon from 12:30 to 3:30 off so you can attend class. Or let's make sure you have Tuesday and Thursday evening where you're getting off of work by 4 so you can make it to 5:30 class. So that's kind of my answer there.
Great, thank you so much. I know we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I have found this really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to this next phase for COABE and NASDAE of having the focus groups and having some great data to release in addition to what we've already put out. And I see there's some questions about the actual report. So this will be forthcoming at the end of this week in honor of Adult Ed and Family Literacy Week with all the data that we've captured so far. So yes, that will be released. I just wanted to mention that. And then Crystal and Jeff and Pat, any last words before we close it down?
Happy Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. Rock on.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you to Crystal for taking the time to talk to us as an employer, because I just really think that that's a huge piece. I love to listen to the employers, and it's a great thing to know what they need and what they want.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I really enjoyed hearing from Jeff, Crystal, and Stephenie. That was great to hear. So, and I just a couple of comments in the chat that I saw. Thanks for everyone. You were so active. Your comments in the chat were great, but I know there were some questions about, is there a bias coming through? And I think that's what we're trying to get at. Also, I wondered myself for future conversations, when someone is applying for the job, are they just asked the question, do you have a high school diploma? And depends on, what state you're in, you might have passed the GED test or the HiSET and have a high school diploma. So I think there's a lot more questions that we have to answer. I know somebody was concerned, well, if they've taken the test in Spanish, does it indicate that on their credential, and is that, our employers biased against that? And thank you to the person from Diploma Center who said, well, for the states that they cover, which I think was about 18, there's no mention of that on the actual credential. So anyway, just all in all, this was fascinating. It's the beginning of the conversation, not the end. So thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to let the employer have the last word. Crystal, do you want to say anything before we wish everyone well?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And if I can help in any way, I did put my email in the chat box. Like I said, I work in construction, but I'm also working a lot in healthcare. It seems like a lot of people are contacting me to look at options to engage the adult ed population as well, and how do we elevate them. So thank you so much for just having the educational spirit to understand that everyone has a chance and that they just need one little advocate there. And if we can be that from the industry side or the educational side, you know, that's all it takes is one opportunity to make that person's life and then their family's life so much better. So thank you for all you guys do every single day. I know it's not easy. And thank you for taking your time to come to this webinar. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much, everybody. Happy Adult Ed and Family Literacy Week.